We're going to start all the way down with Emily. We've talked about this feeling, and what I'd really like you to do is start to delve a little bit into that feeling that you've seen yourself feel, and also maybe the peers around you.
Sure. So we keep talking about this as a gap. We've really aged out of that young professional category, but aren't quite seasoned professionals. So I want to start with a key basic principle that I think is important to our discussion today. I think people need support systems such as networking and mentoring at all phases of their life. So I'll say that again. People need support systems at all ages of their life. And what are those? Those are people to push them to be their best, and people to recognize their success and their efforts, and people to share examples with them or make them feel like there's others that are in the same boat as you. And I think that, as Chris explained, we had a really big effort 10 to 15 years ago to build those things for our young professionals. We do a great job at that recognition, those peer groups, the mentoring, at so many different things, that suddenly when you aren't a part of that group, and those are the things that you've come to expect, the expectations maybe have changed because those things aren't there. I'm in a little bit different place than everyone up here. I think I'm the oldest one up here. I was the youngest in my Greater Des Moines leadership class. I was the youngest in my 40 under 40 class, so I wasn't necessarily surrounded by those that were my peer group at that point. And I don't know that I really was as involved in the young professional group. So I'm interested because what I hear from those that have been, that they just really feel like those expectations maybe have changed, and it's expected that now there are these support groups at that age. So I think that we're recognizing a lot of really extreme examples, and I think it's good to know, and maybe we'll get into a little bit later, that there maybe isn't just one path, and everyone can pick their own path and create their own story, and not everyone has to be on 20 boards and at every event at age 25, that it's okay to take your time. You've got a lot of time. So.
I gotta be honest, when my wife, Kate, said that I needed to seek out counseling for some of my issues, I didn't realize it was gonna be like this, so I appreciate you all being here and walking me through all of my feelings. If we're gonna talk about feelings, I guess this issue, this on deck, kind of started for me about a year ago, and I have had this path that we talk about through high school, through college, after college, through groups like YPC Young Variety, GDMLI, 40 Under 40. I've had the opportunity to experience these amazing things, but about a year ago, I came to this point in my life where I said, I know all these organizations, I know all these opportunities out there, but what's next for me? Where do I fit? And I didn't have an answer for that, and that was the first time in my life that I didn't have that answer. And it was tough for me. I struggled a lot, and I have struggled a lot over the last year, mentally, physically, and trying to figure this out, and I don't have the answers for it. I'm usually not one, and you can talk to my friends and family about this, to open up a lot to people, so this is a unique experience for me. I'm also the only one drinking on stage. I know that's that usually opens me up a little bit, but usually in inappropriate ways. Thank you. All right. But what I did realize a few months ago, I made a decision to myself that I needed to start talking about some of these issues, start talking about some of these uncomfortable feelings in these positions that I am in. And once I did that, I noticed something, and I think what my fear was is that I was the only one out there that was feeling this. I was the only guy that was lost. I know a lot of people in the audience, and they're doing amazing things with their life, and I thought, why am I the only one that can't figure my shit out? And once I started talking to people, Chris being one of them, I realized I wasn't the only one. I realized this is actually an issue. And the best way, and I know Des Moines is a great community for doing this, is talking about things. And so that's what I'm hoping that today provides, is to provoke that thought, discussion, discovery, to figure out, all right, what ideas, what opportunities, what out there, how do you find that meaning, that purpose? Or has everything that I've done been just to fill a void? Is there something that I'm missing? What is that? So I appreciate everyone being here today, and I think we can figure some things out working together. So thank you.
I feel like I should cede my time to Mike for his therapy. One word that Mike said that resonates with me is opportunity. And having moved back to Des Moines in 2011 and sort of existed as a young professional in a larger city, and then sort of the tail end of when I was a young professional in Des Moines, I got a taste of how much opportunity you can have based on where you're at. And I think I was really fortunate to come back when I did, because I was able to engage in sort of the tail end of some of the YPC activities, the alphabet soup that exists out there of emerging professionals groups, to get involved, explore, and sort of identify your network and your peer groups. However, when you get older, what happens, I think, is that it starts being more discrete, what your interests are, what your vision is, Mike touched on this a little bit, what you want to accomplish with your life and how to focus in on that. And so that can be isolating, because when you start to refine and define who you are, that group starts to be smaller, and that Venn diagram of things that you have in common with some of the more general networking groups become harder and harder to identify and sort of benefit from. So it's just I guess the opportunity that you have when you start to feel that cliff come up on you a little bit, that you do feel alone. You do feel like you're floating a little bit, because what am I going to do? I don't want to lose touch with my friends, but at the same time, am I focusing my energy on the things that are going to create the biggest impact as I'm sort of going through my day? So that's probably what I struggled with the most.
Megan?
All right, my lost time was probably about 6 years ago, 5 years ago. I have a 5-year-old daughter. So right about the time she was born, it was unexpected. We weren't planning to have a daughter right about that time. So it was like smack in kind of the peak of everything that I was trying to accomplish and do in the community. And for many of you, my friends that are here, know it's very hard for me to slow down and to kind of put the brakes on. So that's depressing for me, to be able to like stop and to be able to come to the conclusion that I can say no, because like I'm gonna have a nervous breakdown if I don't. You can't manage everything, but at the same time I didn't want my career to stall. Something had to give, and so it was an eye-opening self discovery experience, I guess, if you want to say. And actually, talking about mentors and everything, I kind of get choked up, because it was my dad, and I'm looking at Lindsay because she'd known me since we were born, but the least expected person that I thought would like sit down and have a conversation with me, because he's not like that. But he sat down, he's like, list all the things that are important to you, and don't think about anything. Just what are the things that are important to you, and everything that you're doing in your life, fulfilling those, and if not, cross them off. So, I am passionate about a lot of things, and I'm really involved in a lot of things, and so it's heart-wrenching to kind of let go, and but at the same time, opportunity. Giving other people opportunity is a really exciting thing, and it's kind of led me to where I'm at now in my leadership role that I absolutely love, with my team as well, to be able to help other people fulfill their dreams.
Wow, thank you, Megan. That's, it's wonderful to see that raw emotion of how important mentors and how important it is to have somebody that you think has some perspective on this, to be able to sit down and share those kind of, like peeling back the onion, getting to that inside part of who you are and what that's all about. And that's my next question for the panel, because we talked about how you're feeling and how this came up with you. I want to share a story first. Lauren Burke, who was the Young Professional of the Year from Juice a number of years ago, I invited her to speak to my Rotary Club. And she was asked to speak on that topic. I'm looking at a fellow Rotarian. I don't know if you were at that meeting, but so she talked about what it was like to be the YP of the Year, and then she ended with this topic. She ended with what's next. And she brought up this whole concept of on deck and those feelings, right? And they're real, and the reaction from my boomer fellow Rotarians was actually fairly negative, and I would say fairly hostile. The reaction to them of those 3 opportunities was they didn't recognize it as a problem. Their belief was, put on your big girl panties and go forth. It's your time to look back to the young professionals and help them the way others helped you. And so she was really surprised by the reaction that she got from some of the boomers. So my question is this: as you've talked to boomers about this, as opposed to your peers, what has been their level of awareness and what has been their reaction? Emily?
And I haven't talked a lot about this with boomers, so that's an interesting question. I think the group that I've talked about it more would be peers or young professionals. I have and so I'm going to pivot your question just a bit, that a lot of young professionals come up to me all the time and say, how did you do it? I have kids, I have all this going on, and how do you do it? How'd you do it when I was your age? And that's where I always say I wasn't that involved. And so I feel like I said, expectations have maybe changed because we hold people up on pedestals that have been so involved in our community. And I always remind folks I wasn't that involved, and it's okay to take time to spend with your kids or really look at everything you're involved in and try a lot of things and pick the 2 that are the most important to you. I did that at one point in my life and just decided I want to not be surface level involved in 20 things. I want to really dig deep, and I chose the Des Moines Playhouse and Drake University because those are 2 organizations that I felt got me to where I am, and then built long-term relationships and became in leadership roles with those organizations. So I was very selective on how I spent my free time. So I guess that's what I would say is what the advice I give those young professionals that are asking me about this is be patient. You don't have to take the same path, and not everyone has to do everything right now, which it kind of feels like it's a little bit of a race to do all that.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of experience with talking about this with boomers either. It's been mostly amongst my peer group, but I hesitate to use the word problem, because a lot of times in the past, as a lot of these organizations have appeared, or these ideas or these events, I would use the term opportunity. You know, we don't know what's going to come out of today, but it's an opportunity to make Des Moines better, to lift each other up, and there's potential there to do so. So I don't necessarily know that it's an issue, and I can completely see that perspective of saying, well, I didn't need this, I didn't need that. Well, what is that? And if that doesn't mean that we need to push back against it, to say, well, let's not even discuss it, let's not even talk about it, but what is the opportunity? What is the potential to come out of discussions like that, and what does it hurt to have the discussions? So,
Joe, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit, with the GAP group, you've talked with a variety of different professionals, different age levels too. Just curious if any of that sentiment came out that Jeanette was talking about, and how that group maybe responded to.
Yeah, GAP is, Lucas, you're going to have to help me. It's Greater Des Moines
Area Experienced Professional.
Yes, which is a group of that we're starting to put together of people who are in our age demographic to talk about, you know, this specific issue that we're talking about today. To answer Jeanette's question and kind of build into Chris's, the response I usually get is quit your crying. And the reason I think that is, and this is my opinion based on what I hear from people in our group and in other conversations, is that boomers have a tendency to want things to go towards stasis, to the point where it's, you know, it's set a certain way, and you're going to have a specific task, and it's going to be very linear. Our generation doesn't think that way. We look for how are we going to have impact, how are we going to innovate, how are we going to accelerate, how are we going to make the most amount of impact in the greatest amount of areas. A lot of it has to do with social media and the way we communicate with each other. It's just different. They're different cultural paradigms. So the expectation that we understand each other and speak the same language is not really fair to either generation. But the things that we talk about in GAP are just like, well, why can't we focus? Why can't we onboard? Why can't we make people understand that if I want to be on this board or I want to be on that board, that I do want to break with some of the established paradigms. And I would say that this is probably not fair to a lot of boards, but some of what we call the big boards on GAP and ELC and some of the other groups are sort of, you know, when you make the jump from young variety to variety, they function very differently and they have very different missions. So to think that it's just a logical step to go from one to the other, it's not, because you have to think about what you're investing and what the purpose of the organization is. And they may function very differently than you think they do in terms of investing your time and resources. So does that kind of answer the question?
You don't have to.
No, I think some of professionally and in the community. So reactions that you've had are ones that you see in the community that speak about the importance of ABC and all of these types of things, and then you approach them to receive counseling or coaching or mentoring, and to have a negative reaction. So that's been, I've had a couple of those experiences, and then it's just disappointing or kind of taken aback because you thought these people were the ones that were supposed to be supporting career advancement and those kind of things. The opposite effect is that I think try not to let those crush you, because there are so many people in the community that are willing to help, that once you find them and they take you under their wing, the world is your oyster and you're going